Ho, ho, ho to all of you watching right now.
It's beanie season.
Beanie season. Beezy season. It's beanie season. This is the art of sexuality and MBTI personality types with me, Blake.
Oh boy.
Damon, and Daniel, second party MBTV. So, in this video, we're going to be talking about sexuality and how, I guess, personality types reflect this, what's true to them.
Did you say reflect?
Yeah, reflect on,
Oh, okay.
types of sexuality. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so it's beanie season, though. So, it is what it is, guys.
Wear your beanie,
So anyway.
Stockings over the fireplace. If you haven't seen that.
Yeah, so sexuality is preference that me and Blake both share. If you follow the social variants, I assume that we're going to be covering sexuality with the very literal terminology of sexuality, not just Enneagram social preference. So, Blake,
Hey.
let's start off with you. What does sexuality mean to you as an ESTJ? Can you even be sexual? Tell the audience what that looks like.
Well, I will tell you something. I was reading an article one time. It basically said how each different personality type has sexual intercourse. And for ESTJ, it said that ESTJs don't have sex with people. They use people to masturbate with.
Huh.
And I thought, yeah, sometimes. There's definitely more of an emotional disconnect.
Oh, so there is.
But hey, it just depends on like what stage you are in your life. Like if you're going through college and you really don't care, and you're just trying to do your own thing, and not develop close relationships with the opposite sex or what you're attracted to.
Why don't you elaborate a little bit on your sexual journey, like sexuality as it pertains to like your development over time, maybe.
Wow, this is getting pretty personal.
Well, it doesn't have to be personal, but kind of just like you can generalize and however you see fit.
Oh yeah, sure. So, man, where do I start?
Holy crap! We have a topic about sexuality right now.
I know we do. I don't even know where to start. I don't know how to answer his question.
What question is that? What did you ask him, Daniel?
I asked him to just kind of go into how he, I forgot my question actually. Personal development of sexuality. How, I asked him to explain how his sexuality has evolved over time. And as much as a logistics person that he is, he can't really get into detail about that. So.
Well, you want to hear a secret? I'll share a secret with you.
Dude, is it MBTV relatable?
Yeah. No, yeah, totally. At one point, well, this is just about me. At one point, I thought I was attracted to both guys and girls. Okay. Bisexual. But I think it's because I spent a lot of time around homosexual men. And that's where I kind of got my flamboyant nature, that and probably SpongeBob. But I found that it wasn't that I was like sexually attracted to or romantically attracted to men. It's that I just admired the male body, and it's like and the aesthetics behind it. I kind of saw it like as very artful, like a muscular male body. Do what?
You do have a male body, so I mean it would make sense.
No, I know. So that probably plays on the narcissistic side of me a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of obsessed with the ideal male image of what is supposed to be, the best version of what a male should look like. I like that. It's very pleasing to the eyes for me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, I want to engage in any sort of sexual activity with a male.
Okay, so thanks for sharing that, Blake. Daniel, I'm going to flip the question.
Yeah, no problem.
Daniel, let's flip the question on you. At what point did you experience the evolution of your own sexuality?
Um,
Or did it evolve at all, or is it still on a primal primate level?
it was probably, no, it probably evolved. It used to be, I would say when I was 17, 18, it was primal. But then when I discovered love, I think I evolved sexually.
Okay, so what does that mean? What does that mean for you as someone who obviously is a ENFJ?
Well,
what does that mean?
I think for me, intimacy is like pretty big. I need a really big amount of intimacy with the connections that I make, and so for example, that point of transition where I guess you could say my sexuality evolved. When I discovered what love was, that pull, right, the magnetism with it, right, it allowed me to really explore a place that was very intimate for myself to be in, right? It was almost like I was in like a forest that nobody was allowed to go into, right? Like it was like a park where you can't litter, right? It was like very sacred. And so my experiences since then have definitely evolved because there's a kind of awareness that I come to know through those experiences, through that kind of mindset, and and sharing yourself and everything that entails sexuality. It really started kicking in when I, really started to love others, I guess. So I would say.
Okay, so my question here is, I've got to figure this out. So I'm very curious about this whole love thing because I don't know what the hell that means. But let's boil this down.
Please. Straight on my TV.
Love.
Yeah,
I'll boil it down. I'll boil it down.
Hold on. Let me make a perspective here real quick, Daniel. Is sexuality enhanced with love, or is it not? How does love influence sexuality?
It's self-actualized with love.
Okay, but let's break it down though. What is love? And then B, how is it self-actualized? Because a lot of people are claiming to be in love, and a lot of people are having sex who claim to be in love. Are they all self-actualized, or what? Or what are we talking about here?
Well, you have to really break down what it is that you think is love, right? For some people, love is like a fixation, right? Like people think that the beginning of like a relationship or something that it's love, but it's really just the beginning. It's just like kind of being obsessed and addicted to an individual. Dopamine's going off, and that subsides over time, and then you're really stuck with everything else after that, like that physical attraction.
You're stuck with that person. That's horrible.
Yeah,
I know.
Right. So
I have a thought.
That's why a lot of people in relationships fall off after a year or 2 years, because people don't really understand how to appreciate people or kind of understand gratitude or intimacy, building intimacy not just through attraction but through different means like mental intimacy and spiritual intimacy and different ways to express and be present with that person. And so for a lot of people, I'm assuming when people are just starting to get out there and date and really explore that, sexuality, that's so true, Brian Ascani. It's interesting that, it's a learned thing, and it's really about the investment level. A lot of people won't understand love if they don't really care to want to know, right? As in, I'll give you an example. Jet Plane 48 doesn't really care to know about MBTI type. He really doesn't want to do the research and read into it. But, when I start laying down some facts about MBTI, he doesn't believe it. So it's like, if I tell you what love is, you really have to explore it for yourself. It's a part of your own journey. It's a subjective kind of idea, as well as anything else that you would say. I could ask you, Damon, like, what is democracy to you? Right?
Okay, well, let's tie this back. Let's get to the point here. Well, the point is, all right, so let's associate with its functions. Obviously, Blake and I we have, I think, 10 years in between our age. Both Blake and I are trying to figure out what is love, and we both lead with TE. In your experience, Daniel, would you say there's a correlation there?
Well, I think that types are built for different things at different parts of their life. I believe that as I get older, I will be more in the realm of bringing things to action, doing more, really kind of creating clarity with, kind of navigating through life. Whereas right now, I'm very people focused. I'm very interested in this kind of sexual exploration now. I'm interested in exploring people now, what people mean to me, what I mean to others, and really exploring the humanistic side. Whereas I can totally see myself getting older and like, I'm actually starting to get there now where I'm starting to say to myself, like, I'm really tired of dating. I have all these skills, I'd rather just find that one person. Right. Whereas, 10 years from now, my motives will be different. And so I remember when I was 16, 17, 18, and I was talking to adults, they were like, you know what, you may be very thirsty at this age, but this will go away. You will eventually calm down. You will want to focus in, and I'm, at that time I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But now I feel it. I understand that. Right?
Okay, well, I still want to tie it back to TE and FE.
Right.
How is it different in somebody who is leading with FE versus someone who leads with TE? In your experience, what have you seen, and that draws the contrast between two TE users like Blake and I versus you and your exploration of sexuality? Would you say it's different in your experience? Being a dating and relationship coach and the people you've worked with who may have led with these functions, how would you say it's different from FE to TE?
I would say TE, it's more about diplomacy and values, versus FE, it's really more about the emotional journey, the emotional presence. There's more of a value on that emotional presence, not as much the values, not as much as out, and I'm using the word diplomacy lightly because, obviously ESTJ and ENTJ are going to be fixated differently with their romantic partners. And I'm pretty sure that you and Blake and you can really talk about your differences with TE. But for what I've seen, I've worked with, ironically, I've only worked with a couple of women who were TE dominant, and for them it was still emotional, but it was more about what they were getting out of the relationship. Was there progress being made? Were all their values being met? Are they kind of growing? Is the relationship going in a really great direction? So it's really more, I guess, about the physicalities, about the actual relationship. As far as the love aspect, it's not something I commonly hear. I worked recently with an ESTJ woman who, sincerely wanted there to be love with her husband. But, what love meant to her was really more perfectionistic because she was the type 1 Enneagram. She really strived for this ideal relationship that was just falling apart. And so I think generally, TE users want there to be specifics to how the relationship works and what they need and want. And then when all those things are aligned, then maybe there's like this fulfillment of what you would call love. Whereas I think later on in life, if like ESTJs and ENTJs, for example, they get into their 30s and 40s, and they really start to, have their emotions more present in their lifestyle. It's really, I guess, about downloading it at a quicker rate so it's more in the present moment. Whereas for like me, I'm an ENFJ, I'm always in the know with my feelings. I don't have to wait to understand how I feel about something. Because I can tell somebody, if anybody asked me right now, I would know how I feel about them. I would know the future implications of the relationship I see, where I see the relationship going. And so I'm very present with my emotions. As I grow older, I can totally see myself really kind of abiding by the values that I like, even though that's not as much present in my life right now. It's kind of delayed. So like I get caught up in the tornado, and then once the tornado is gone, I kind of do damage control, and I kind of put all these values and systems together to create a relationship after the attraction phase is done. So I don't know if that makes sense.
All right. So the follow-up question to this is, obviously the ENJs and the ESJs. The ENJs specifically, I want to talk about that because it's TESE. And I want to see if the comparison between the ENJs versus the ESJs, which is your typical NE. When it comes to sexuality, Blake, I want to know from your perspective. Let's say that you're a representative of all ESTJs. In this case, maybe it's not, maybe it is, but let's explore this a little bit. The SE portion of the ENTJ and the ENFJ is the manifestation of what they wish to create. Does that sound familiar in sexuality for, say, STJ, or is it more of creativity and exploration based off of here's what sex is, here's what you can do with it? Tell me about that, Blake.
It's more of that last part you said. Here's what sex is, here's what you can do with it. I honestly... I'll give you this. Sometimes I have like overwhelming TE going on for some reason, and it'll override any sort of like horniness or need to want to go out and do it.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
For some reason, the TE is overwhelming. Blake, you only live it. It's your dominant function. Yeah, but I know what you mean. I definitely understand and relate to that. What actually, this is a really good topic for TE people.
Well, here's the thing, Damon. Like, I'm 19 years old, and really, up until this point, I haven't really been introspective on my sexuality and that lifestyle. I haven't really gave into a lot of thought and why things are the way they are. It just kind of like, it's just like a whatever.
Would you agree with me then, Blake, that you think like maybe if you're like in your 30s or 40s, you can see yourself really resonating with that aspect of life when it comes to your feelings and sexuality? Do you think that eventually you'll put value on it? Because that's what it really is. It comes to a point where we're growing, and then we want to put a value on these areas.
Yeah.
Which I see with both of you guys. I totally see that. Like right now, you both aren't really concerned with, relationships and really desiring that relationship. If it happens, it happens. Versus me, I always look forward to enjoy and pursue.
Okay. Well, let's focus back on the TESE.
Yeah. Sorry, Damon.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm curious to know, Blake, from your perspective. Like, you said it's a little more about what it was, but although you didn't say you've explored it a lot. But when you say TE kind of cuts it off, can you describe that? Like you can kind of channel yourself, and that's natural. I want to know from your perspective because I have my own, but I want to know kind of how it works in you.
Well, like whenever I think about a potential for doing some sexually creative activity, I'll weigh that out with everything else that's going on in my life right now. And if, I feel like something else is more important, I'll immediately be like, oh, I have to, like, it goes against my value system to indulge in that sort of activity whenever I know I should be working toward, doing something else. Like whether it's an assignment or helping you guys out. Like I don't feel good afterwards indulging any sort of like sexual activity when I know I should be like doing something else to reach those higher goals. So it's kind of weird.
Okay. I'll share my perspective real quick. For me, it's I have a vision of where I want my future to go, and I know where I want to take it. I want to manifest it. So when this is obstructed by something, whether it's a physical impulse or whether it's an instinctive impulse, I naturally have an internal resistance to go, okay, I need to focus on the goal at hand. Don't give into an instinctual response. So I can divert my attention. I still feel it, but I let it kind of pass through, and I try not to reject it or push it away because it's a negative feeling or anything. But here's where I think the difference is. When I, as somebody who is NISE, and I'm trying, what we're doing, guys, just so the audience knows, is we're trying to draw correlations. This is not backed up by anything that we've studied or read as far as MBTI goes, but we're just looking at correlations between different EJs in this conversation. So for me, it's much more vision oriented. So it's like, here's what needs to be fulfilled. And here's it's like you see the painting before you actually paint it. And so you know what direction you want to take sexuality as well. And so if you have the wrong brush, or if you have the wrong colors, you have the wrong palette of colors, you have the wrong canvas, you have the wrong type of paint, the dissatisfaction that comes as a result from that is so intense that it makes you not want to do it at all. As far as I say you, it makes me not want to do it at all, because it's not fulfilling. I know that the painting's not going to come out the way I want it to come out. And that's really frustrating for me, because it's like you're missing different pieces. And that's what I don't like about the whole, I guess for me, it's NISE. I kind of see it, what it needs to be, and it's not being matched with reality. And SE is for me, it's a confirmation of reality. It is like, okay, here's the vision. SE is the proof that it's actually happening the way that I want it to happen. And here's the direction I want to take it. Now, granted, I can't speak for all ENTJs, because this is my personal preference. I wouldn't say it really goes against my values, but if you're going to commit to something, you're going to commit to it 100%. You want to put everything you have into it, whether it's sexuality, whether it's intimacy, romance, work, business, relationships, friendships, whatever it may be. It's 100%. So I've always seen sexuality as, until there's some type of deep connection, which is the pieces or the pieces of that puzzle, I try to, and I tend to avoid sexuality in general. And because I feel that it is obstructive to the other goals, which I put much merit in, which is business growth, business success, and spreading the word and delivering, information to people to really enhance people's lives. So for me, it's much more than just, let's just relieve the physical urge to do it, or let's just have some fun. Or yes, granted, I feel it like every other person, but like I said, if it's not fulfilling, like it's kind of like you spend 3 hours or 4 hours cooking in the kitchen. You want the food to turn out good, and when the food tastes like crap, it's really, really disappointing, because you have an idea of how you want the food to taste, and then it turns out like crap. You're like, wow, that was a real waste of time. And so after repeated exposure of these, you start getting to this point where you start trying to shut it down in general. You just go, I don't have time for this because it's not fulfilling. This creates a lot of meta programs, of course, in saying that, it's ultimately going to result in that. So I try to keep an open mind and say not everything's going to wind up like that experience. But ultimately, that's kind of the direction I've gone with it. I would say in the last 3.5, 4 years, it's been like that for me. I've seen it as an obstruction primarily to what I've been doing, instead of an actual, some type of passionate experience, which I actually would prefer. The pieces of my painting are not complete. It's missing many components to make it a complete picture, and that happens every time. So that would be my perspective. I don't know if Daniel, you can relate. Anything?
You overwhelmed me there. Could you summarize real quick?
I overwhelmed you.
Yeah. Not sex.
I was about to say, Daniel, you can log off the camera now. Shut your camera off. So for me, yeah, there's much more than just the aspect of let's do it and resort to our animalistic instincts, which is I got to get laid, or I got to bust a nut, or whatever term you use. And it's more of the fact of getting into a mindset of here's what I wish to fulfill. Here's the vision that I have. And because of this, if that vision falls short, then I cannot commit myself to take sexuality seriously.
It's almost like
it
sounds like passion to me.
Yeah, I would consider myself a passionate person.
Yeah,
so,
you're kind of very present with the journey that you're going on in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and passion's part of the painting in which I described the metaphorical explanation of what sexuality should be fulfilled. The passion is part of that piece of that puzzle. There's other aspects too. If you have, this sounds really bad, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. If you have two people who have opposite intelligences, Okay, you have a person who has kinesthetic intelligence and then a person who has head intelligence, but no kinesthetic intelligence. It's going to be a little bit difficult for either party. One has kinesthetic intelligence, true. You would think that person's naturally going to be skilled at sexuality in some way, shape, or form. But without the head intelligence, you're not able to pick up the subtle nuances that's going on in the psychology of the person, or vice versa, right? If you have somebody with head intelligence has no kinesthetic intelligence, how can you feel involved in something that level? So what I'm saying is that if you're having opposing people that are in a position to where there's no match and they can't understand each other, and it's nonverbal communication here. I'm talking nonverbal. Yes, obviously you can communicate verbally, but I'm saying nonverbal communication. Sometimes people have unspoken needs that aren't set, and that's sexual, or that's even in standard daily life, right? And you have to be able to perceive those things. So with a lack of intelligence, which certain areas, not all areas, and usually somebody's intelligent in one or two areas, like the multiple intelligences test, it's important that you guys have you're on the same page with that, because otherwise it gets kind of like, okay, I'm trying to communicate something to you, but you're not picking up on it, right? And I'm talking from in my experience, the female standpoint. They want me to pick up on what they need, and they need to pick up on what I need psychologically. I don't want to have to tell them this is what I need psychologically. I need you to do all this. I need you to do this and fulfill this and give me this and tell me that and whatever it may be. I don't want to go through that list. That kills passion. It's like, let me give you a sequential step to how to have sex. Step 1, step 2, step 3, TE style, right? I don't want to do that. I find that to be a passion kill or a buzz kill, right? Yeah. And that is not how it should be, because what it is the unfolding of the human spirit, right? It's embodying something outside of self to where two people are coming together to form one singular piece of artwork. And that to me is what it should be, and not this animalistic style of, and I'm not saying animalistic sex is bad. I'm saying the animalistic style of, I'm giving into my instincts, so I'm just going to do you right, real good, right, crit, and that's it, right? And there's no romance, there's no passion, there's no experience. The redneck stuff doesn't work for me. And so that's what I mean. And so if someone can pick up on that, I don't find it attractive that someone is just stripping themselves down. There's this thing called sensuality. It's kind of why I like more conservative clothing. It's not because I have anything against things that are revealing. It's just there's a sensual side that's important to me. And this is a personal preference. I'm not condemning people who are less conservative in clothing or not. It's just his personal preference. For me, it's a process. Not that I'm any better or worse than anybody else. And we all have our preferences. Some people like their women big. Some people like their women small, tall, short, blonde hair, brown hair, black hair. It doesn't matter. I mean, we all have our preferences. But the ultimate point is understanding that what this person needs or what that person needs, without having to go through a list of this, and this, right? And that is the unspoken communication that needs to happen during sexuality and even during any type of course of relationship. But yeah, it has passion. What, did somebody say something?
Yeah, that's what ultimately happens when you really connect with somebody. You can kind of pick up on all these different things that somebody may need specifically, right? And you can kind of gain more of an awareness because you're now connected to them in that moment, right? And so there's so many times that I had moments of insight about what somebody needed just based off of mixing with them, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always had really weird views about it because, you know, it's like, I don't know, it's very strange for me. I find the instinct is subordinate to my reasoning. And that to me is, I mean, I do feel the instinct, like I said, and it can be very powerful, but it can be very confusing. But at the same time, it's subordinate, which means that I am not going to give in to the instinct simply because I want to have something. It's the delayed gratification, the dance of romance that is expanding through a period of time. It's this process in which unfolds, creating tension, right? Years and years of tension, or months and months, or weeks and weeks of tension that build up to this point of anticipation. And that buildup is so powerful, that buildup of just the tension between two people. And this is purely from a sexual standpoint. This is not from a feeling emotional standpoint, right? Which can even add more element to it. that's the part that I obviously have not experienced when you're talking about love and all this shit, right? That's the part I haven't really experienced. But what I'd like to add that into the recipe for ultimate sex, which 3 steps, 3 things to have ultimate sex. Blake, I need you to turn that over.
You know my purpose.
Do what? What is your exact sexual purpose?
Dress conservatively. Arrive on time. And prepare.
And finish on time. Not early.
On time.
But you can be late.
Make sure you have 3 Uber outside ready to pick you up.
Yeah, exactly. And never stay the night. All right, so the key is just oh, Blake broke that rule. So the key is just to understand that each of us have our preferences and in the understanding of that. But for me, it's I don't know if we can correlate this to type. I would like to attempt to do so from the simple fact of just even cognitive functions, right? I can see similarities between Blake and I, especially subordinating instinct to our goals and objectives. But that's still a tough thing. But sometimes we get so focused, it's like, I'm going to push this off. You know, but I tell you one thing, if I could not push it off, if the recipe, I have all the ingredients for the recipe.
That's what I was going to ask you before, is if you had all the ingredients and the painting was almost ready to be painted perfectly, you know.
Yeah, if I had all the ingredients, you would see me throw the artist freaking canvas on and I'd be good to go.
Yeah.
Right? Put the coveralls on. And that'd be it.
That would be it.
That's it. All right, so let's talk about Effie. So you kind of see how Blake and I have structured this. Let's talk about, you know, how you see it. How do you view sexuality? I mean, obviously you've talked about your experience, but what goes through your mind when you're getting ready to do the deed?
Well, you know what? It's an art. It's an art form. It's like kind of how like I see, like I consider communication an art form, right? And so part of the reason why I love being a dating and relationship coach is my earlier years being really fixated in the dance. Imagine like you're in a ballroom and or not a ballroom. Let's just say you're really good at dancing, right? And you have like the unlimited amount of time to be in the dance room, right? And so I really enjoy this artful kind of experience, or this way of seeing romance and sexuality. I love dancing with women, or even people, like on a basic level. I like the back and forth. Like I like how there's kind of like a sword dance with sexuality, right? And it's like a back and forth kind of game. And it's really a place to express, for me anyway, it's really to express that freedom of being emotionally present. So for me, it's more like of an art form, less of like a painting. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does.
But yeah, totally, like, romantic, pretty much like that movie, pretty much like that romance novel is kind of like how I would envision my sexuality, right? Mm-hmm. Like very, very masculine, romantic, very, assertive and whatever, however the style is. And it varies by connection, The really cool thing about having, multiple partners over time, you really get to explore the different kind of, sexualities out there. You really get to explore, people's kind of journey, right? There's something about sexuality where you really get to understand the other person and what they've been through to enjoy in which the way that they're enjoying or being in that moment. So I really appreciate like the difference that people have with their own dance, with their own art form. Everybody uses a different kind of paintbrush. Everybody uses, everyone wants to draw like a different kind of painting. And so it's kind of cool when
Whoa. That's a big claim. Most people don't want to draw a different type of painting. Most people are like, I'm ready to get it on.
Well, yeah, if you're looking for that.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just saying we can't jump to the conclusion that most people see it as an art form.
No, I'm talking about extrovert feelers.
Okay, I don't even think they all see it as an art form. It takes a very unique person to see it as an art form, and I don't mean that no one sees it as an art form either. I just mean there's people who see it as an art form, and then there's people who see it as relief. I have been friends with both types of people. Okay,
So I take back that claim.
Okay.
I take back the claim. For me, anyway, I see it as an art form. But for the average extroverted feeler, it's something that I can envision regular, everyday extrovert feelers being very fixated in sexuality. Right? It's a very important part of their lifestyle.
Okay. Well, let's change the topic. Let's change gears real quick to the next point, which is promiscuity and polyamory. Let's talk about this and the personality types. All right, so we only have representation of FE and TE here. We don't have really the dominant NI a perspective of Trey, but we do have the judging of FE and TE, which is great because that's what we need for extroverted judging, so that's perfect. So let's talk about this. First off, we can't really say that a certain type is going to be more promiscuous than another type. Obviously, we understand that people can cheat, and we can say that some types may likely be more promiscuous. But let's get to that in just a second. Let's dive into this particular topic of polyamory, and is it effective for a certain type to really learn through experience, or is it important for someone to be dedicated to one relationship in whole and experiment one person at a time? What do you say, Daniel? What say you?
What say me in promiscuity and polyamory?
Yeah, what say you with the types?
First off, what is polyamory for our audience?
Okay, so polyamory is multiple partners at any given time. That would be the generic description. There's obviously specific.
You know what's...
Polygamy is marriage. Polyamory just multiple people at one time.
And everybody that you're doing it with knows that you are, in fact, doing it with other people. And
yeah, it's okay. It's cool. Like
it's cool.
Yeah.
I've known, I may be biased here, but I have known a ton of ENFPs being polyamorists. A lot of ENFPs that I've met have been polyamorous. They've always wanted to talk to other people. They always have 2 to 4 people around at the same time.
Would
it vary by geographical location?
I mean, obviously, it's going to vary extensively. Like I said, biased. I'm talking about the New York City area of ENFPs. And all the women, all the ENFPs I'm talking about are women that I've met, including my sister being one of them, ENFP. She had a phase where she was in polyamory. It was a phase.
I want to define this a little further. Just say that for polyamory too, they're dating multiple partners. Usually, it could be even a relationship with multiple people at any given time. Okay, so and that obviously means that all the partners consent to the particular people having sex with each other. Okay, so
right.
And whereas promiscuous, we're talking about most people who aren't in a relationship. So, most people are just having casual sex for whatever reason. That's going to be our definition for promiscuous. The definitions aren't concise here, but the content is still the same. So that being said, let's continue.
Yeah. So, I mean, I totally get those definitions, and I'm still holding by what I just said.
Okay. That being said, how do you parallel that with other types? How do you what do you think? Obviously, you said ENFP. But ENFP, would you say the ENFP is more promiscuous or more polyamorous, or both?
I would say more. I think it's promiscuity with like a kind of confusion with polyamory. I believe that any dominant users like ENFPs, potentially ENTPs. I actually, believe it or not, I've actually met a lot of ENTP women as well who are into promiscuity in the sense that we're talking about openly, open relationships, polyamory. A lot of ENTPs I know that are very, very much, very finite with it, actually. Way more finite than ENFPs, where I think ENFPs, in this sense, really want to have somebody in their life long term, but maybe it's that lack of development. I don't know. It could be anything, but from my experience for ENFPs, it's been a phase. And for ENTPs I've met, it's like the real deal. Not to say that no other types can be polyamorous. I mean, I know plenty of ESFJs who are polyamorous. Open relationships and all that stuff. So it's not. I don't think it's really. You can't really map it to functionality, although it may correlate more in some types than others. Anybody can have these kind of beliefs. It really depends on your upbringing. It really depends on your society that you're growing up in. There's a lot of factors and variables when it comes to this stuff. And this kind of thing doesn't, it's kind of like societal acceptance, right? Like, who's to say that any of these are right or wrong, right? As far as what you believe to be right, or the beliefs that you want, or the way that you want to pursue people romantically. There is no way. It's all subjective.
Daniel, I got a question for you. Whenever you said that you participate in polyamory and some people you knew also participated.
I never did polyamory.
You never did?
No.
I'm
too
you
possessive.
Did mean that they.
I'm too possessive for that.
Yeah. You did mean that they spread out their love, not just their sex parts, but their love to multiple people. Right.
Yeah, like they would technically be in love with more than one person.
Just wanted to clarify.
And so I'll give you an example. Like, there's times where my sister was dating nobody, and there's times where my sister was, dating somebody who was married, and dating somebody, who wasn't married, or who had 2 other girlfriends. So
is it possible for the STJ to be polyamorous?
I mean, one can never really say. I knew ESFJs who are down that route. So who's to say there may be a correlation? Who knows? But really, again, it's like if you grow up with like a mom and dad who had that kind of lifestyle, how would that affect you? There's a probably heightened probability that because you're exposed to it, the exposure increases your probability of enjoying that more. Maybe not. You can never really say. And there's probably statistics out there for it. I just don't know them.
Right.
Like, for example, it's like, this is a very extreme example, but like you can't really correlate, a gay couple raising a child and that child becoming gay. It's just not a correlated fact. So it may not necessarily be family rated as well. It could just be more genetic then, in that sense.
Right. Hey, so I want to. Can you help me out with this a little bit?
Depends on what I'm helping you with.
Well, no, it's just kind of like a statement, really.
Innuendos are going to be all over this live event.
We don't even need innuendos.
As I'm painting
Let's just go.
Okay. I often wonder what it would really feel like to paint this portrait and for me to actually love it, to be totally in love with it. Because I know what it's like to love something, but to love something while having sexual relations, I do not.
Well, like maybe what, love for you? Or
well, just deep. Like I feel like I've been on the edge.
Well, you know what?
Imagine loving the person, the art.
Okay, so imagine Blake that you met a woman who may or may not be in a higher position than you on the route to entrepreneurship. You met somebody who not only parallels you in her own kind of way of passions and purpose, but she shares a lot of the same values that you have and a lot of the same places that you want to end up in life.
I've been keeping an eye out for that particular woman.
What?
I've been keeping an eye out for that.
Well, yeah, so like you can already tell if there's an interest right away for you, right? So that's something that you would want to look out for. Go to some networking events. You may find somebody.
Blake is always at networking events.
Well, he's still single.
Yeah, so that's not the answer.
Why am I still single in college?
Well,
why are you still single in college, Blake?
You should never be in an actual relationship in college.
Whoa. Depends.
That's a bold claim too, Daniel.
It is, but it's
I want you to defend that claim.
You just like
Defend
to
that claim.
defend myself.
Why? Yes, I do. I like to watch you actually stand up for claims you make. I want to see you defend that claim because you're making a normative claim that no one should be in a relationship in college.
Okay, so you think about it. Think about the correlation. All right, so here's.
Oh, I've thought about it. I'm asking you. Let's go. Yeah.
So there's this philosophy that I've only been solidifying since I understood this. I read somewhere an article a way long time ago about how you should really a lot of people don't end up with the people that they date in college for whatever reason. But I didn't think that article was sufficient enough, so I really wanted to understand it more. And so I've come to the conclusion that, and I help a ton of college kids in this dating environment, and so I work with people, either for free or clients who, they're college students and they're stuck between really staying on track and maintaining a relationship or dating or not putting enough emphasis on school. You have to remember, like, a lot of college kids don't realize that, school is an investment. And so a lot of the times, relationships and the dating life fails college students because that's not why they're there. They have other priorities. Some people can pull it off, some people cannot, and it really gets in the way of relationships. This kind of idea of, going to school, getting your degree, and getting out, and not necessarily, like, I'll give you an example. You can be a college student, in Delaware, and somebody from New York is going to that school. What happens, when that person goes back to New York and you've only been dating them for a month, right? And so that's not enough established time. If it's a situation like this, it's not enough time to build and establish, like, the preliminaries for a long-term relationship. But you can use any other angle when it comes to, dating relationships in college. So I don't know if you had any thoughts.
Okay, so my counter question is, Daniel, that many of our parents, divorced or not divorced, were married in college. They met in high school. I mean, people my age, that's how it was. And many of them are still together. What has changed to make you make it? What?
Many of them are not.
Many of them are not. But that's true across the board. How are you blaming college? Why is college the one being blamed for, at a time in someone's life, for the reason for relationship failure?
It's not even that as well. Also, there is, like, a window when you are young that I've also observed where from high school, later high school year to, like, people in their bachelors, there's this window of there's two kinds of people in the world, and then, like, there's variations. There's people who really, they go for that one person that or the second or the third, and it works out and they really make it work, and then it fails later on in life, maybe like 6 years later, 5 years later. And so, and then there's the other group of people who, who actually, submerge in the dating world, and they date and they meet people. But I don't believe that's synonymous with college life. College life, you're still in a very locked down kind of feel. You do have a lot of people at your, you have a lot of exposure to the people around you. But it's just not the environment to thrive, As far as dating, yeah. Long-term relationships and success, no.
Okay, so here's the thing. This is why I'm in disagreement with this statement. I didn't have a relationship in college, but I'm not saying that all people should avoid relationships in college.
No, I think it's a good place to experiment and to experience and to grow on your skills and experiences in dating.
Okay, dating and relationships. I believe you can do either or. Okay, here's the thing. I decided to have dating experience all throughout my life. I know how to date. I know how to look for dates. I know how to get dates, et cetera, the list goes on. The issue is I have zero relationship experience, and it's a different skill set. So if you're telling me that as a person, not me personally, but someone in college, don't get in relationships, you're forcing them down the road of dating. When in reality, they may really, truly want a relationship, and that's a different skill set.
Well, exactly. A lot of people want relationships, but are they ready for those relationships? My
But
experience, no.
if you don't put yourself in the fire, how the hell are you going to learn how to manage a relationship?
By dating the person first.
Okay, that's a different skill set, though.
It's not
Being
a different skill set.
Yes, it is. Being in a relationship is a totally different skill set. I challenge you to ask somebody who's married if it's a different skill set than someone who is just dating casually.
The skill set is different, but the skills that you have in dating, they only evolve when you become in a relationship with that person, right? The dynamic is going to be different with every person you date or that you're in a relationship with. They're not all the same. You may have, let's just say, 5 really good skills for relationships, right? Or let's just say you want to build on your relationship skills, right? Part of that is actually exploring the actual dynamic with that person. You can't have set skills and then expect it to work with like the next 10 relationships, because there's going to be a dynamic kind of
There's always going to be a dynamic, but it's a different skill set. It's like saying that, instead of cooking, you should learn how to freaking work on cars.
Well, let's just say this, for example. Let's just say you're in college and you're an ENTJ, and you dated for the span of, let's just say, the 4 years you went to college. You dated 5 girls who were mixed between sensors and intuitive thinkers. So they kind of require different skills there. But then when you got out of college, you started dating intuitive feelers, which involves another kind of awareness when it comes to if you're in the relationship at that point.
Yeah, but we all can, people like you and I who really don't get in relationships often, okay? I don't get in relationships. I've been single forever. I've never been in a relationship. So I can tell you right now, there's a lot of shit in relationships that I wouldn't know how to do. Like naturally, I could learn. I'm a pretty smart dude, but I'm not. It's going to be a different skill set because there's a degree of commitment there which you learn how to work with versus the dating experience. Now, to get a relationship, yeah, you have to date, and I'm using the word date, not casually screw somebody, but actually date somebody. You have that process of dating is important to get into a relationship, or you can just be set up by a friend or whatever. But the dating process in general is an important skill, and it's a skill that usually leads to the relationship skill. But ultimately, the relationship skill is a different skill set, and it's a challenge because you've got to deal with working with your own commitment. You've got to deal with your own instincts, whether it's sexual desire or not. A lot of people, their sexual desire for other people falls away because they have feelings. How to effectively communicate when there's a lot at stake, right? Instead of dating, you can go, hey, screw you, and I don't want to talk to you anymore, and you're gone. You can't do that if you're married. How do you resolve that conflict? You can't do that if you're in a committed relationship, unless you're going to throw it away for peanuts.
It comes to a point where the only way that you actually do build on these skills that you're talking about is by exploring it with that specific person. And that you have to remember that you may not work on particular skills with future partners and relationships to follow. I've been in a couple of relationships myself, and I can attest to the fact that people focus on different things in relationships depending on who you are, or if you want to say personality type. There's just different focuses. If Blake's in a relationship, with, I don't know, an ENFJ or an ENTP, they're going to have different value focuses, different skill sets, and they're going to learn from one another. And they may not fully encompass those skills because the relationship may not last as long.
Daniel, I wanted to present a strategy that a friend put on my desk, my mental desk, a while back. He was talking about how he's going to date somebody and then basically sign a contract with them. Not like actually physically sign it, but they're going to be in a relationship with 30 days. And if at the end of those 30 days, they write down all the terrible things about each other and all the great things about each other. And if the great things outweigh the terrible things, then they stay in the relationship for another 30 days until eventually they decide to, they either fall in love or they don't. And
That's interesting. But I wanted to go back to the whole college point.
Yeah. I had to throw that in there.
My point with college is I'm not saying don't go into relationships in college, don't date in college, do both, but I'm really looking at the bigger picture of success rate with these relationships. It's important to get that experience, whether they will succeed or not. Very unlikely for the average person. Very small amount of people in college actually do stick with that person. It's actually,
but who's to say that's a negative experience, though?
It's not. I'm not saying it's a negative experience.
Why should they refrain from doing that?
That's not what I'm saying either.
Oh, well, you said they shouldn't date in college. No one should be in a relationship in college. Are you retracting that claim?
No. I was really more focusing on the mindset of, get the experience while you can, but really learn, grow, and if it ends up being successful, fine. But there's just keep that mindset that it may not work out, just depending on the situation. I've worked with I don't know how many people who have, the two biggest situations in college is what happens when college is done and you have two different focuses in life, because college is really a jumbled population of people from different locations and different career choices, and the other part of just being in different locations and not having enough quality time to really build that intimacy when a big portion of your time is put towards succeeding with that career, that degree. And so it's kind of like it's kind of like a movie. Imagine you're the main character and you find some girl on the journey of, I don't know, the movie plot, and at the end you really don't have time. A lot of movies, right, and this is a good example, you see in movies, and I'm not saying this is realistic or not, but just for an example's sake, you see the main character and what a good one was? Captain America. Perfect example. Captain America becomes superhero. There's this girl in the army that he works with that they have a thing, but they never really get to explore it. And you can substitute the military and the time that they see each other for college. And at the end of the movie, he doesn't even really get around to really pursuing that because they just end up in two different places. And so there's just a lot of people who have this issue with location, remote relationships and wanting it to work, versus the idea of pursuing school and having enough time for the other person and really growing the relationship to say, to get to the point where, we've been together for a year, 2 years, we finished college, and we have that ground, that foundation for a solid relationship.
Okay, so anyway, I mean, I'm not. If you're just talking about it's okay instead of making a normative claim that no one should be in a relationship in college.
No, I totally agree with the idea. I totally date.
I will concede on one point that I do believe that it is statistically unlikely to succeed. But again, what is success? Is it gaining from experience, or is success actually having a long-term relationship?
I'll give you a really good example. There's a correlation. I forgot where I found it. Where there's a huge demographic of people who end up, in high school with somebody romantically. They're with that person up until maybe they're 24, 23, and you see a huge amount of people, break up after these really long relationships from high school because of the fact of being overwhelmed by the diversity, the overall population. Being, having that exposure, to dating other people. So you have to remember that there's a lot of people that break up because, they knew one person all their life from high school, and that with all the struggles that they face, there's people out there that it just may work, I won't say better, but there may be potential, explorations for sexuality and for love, and to really understand what those things mean. A lot of people who marry their first boyfriend or girlfriend, it's not to say that they're missing out, right? But they're really focusing and entrusting and being loyal to that first relationship, and it may be everything that they hoped to want. But this just gets into a whole bunch of other different topics. So,
all right. So we obviously lost track of the main point of this conversation.
Please get back on track.
But
sexuality.
That being said, I actually have another appointment here in 10 minutes. So if you guys want to keep going, I'm going to log off in 5, and you guys can keep the conversation going, because I know you both have a lot to say. Daniel has a lot to say on this topic, so that's fine. I'm not going to stop the call because I have another call after this. But that being said, Daniel, the question I want to ask you to kind of kick off back to the main topic is, when it comes to sexuality, do you believe that people should have multiple partners in your own life experience, or they should get in relationship first and be in a committed relationship and have sex? What is your perspective on that?
Sex before relationship, or
yeah,
during?
or I mean, sex with multiple people with no relationships, casual sex, promiscuity, whatever you want to.
Honestly, and I'll get a lot of feedback from this, but in my honest opinion, as long as you actually establish a connection with somebody, it's totally okay with me. The idea is that it's totally fine to label if it has to meet your value system, but at the same time, you really just need that foundation of establishing an intimate connection and some kind of foundation to establish that connection with somebody. And that's my personal experience. You need to explore this area to really understand the long-term implications of how it's going to work together with you and this person. How can you say that? How can you totally invest in somebody? How can you buy a car and you like the tires, you like the engine, you like the color of the car, but when you explore the more intimate parts of the car, it just doesn't work out for you, right? That's all I'm saying. It's you need that connection. You need to be able to test the waters. It doesn't even have to be in the very direct sense of having actual sex, but exploring that sexuality aspect. You can explore sexuality. It's been done. There's plenty of women that I've met that I felt compatibility with, but we just weren't sexually compatible, and that's all it was. And this is something that you can kind of sense, when you first really start to get romantic with somebody. You can feel and understand the kind of chemistry you'd have with particular individuals.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
can you get Trey in this call to replace you?
Me? No, Trey's gone.
For good?
Yeah, he's gone. No, I'm just kidding. Trey's actually at work.
He's on a date with Amazon.
Yeah, he's on a date with Amazon. Anyway,
Amazon.
But one thing I want to ask you, Daniel, real quick too, is also sexual exhibition. As for how early in a relationship, if someone has a sexual exhibitionist side, how early should they reveal this side to their freaking partner?
Honestly, it shouldn't be something that should be explored intimately.
But how soon after the relationship? Like a day, 3 days, 6 days, weeks, months?
As long as it's mutually, both parties are mutually in the same place.
Okay, but how do you tell? Let's get some real details here. How do you know they're in the same place?
It's about getting to that level. So what that would look like is, and you're right, it wouldn't be within the first week or 2 weeks. That would just come off as creepy. You would want to have.
Unless you're both freaks.
Well, the idea is that you need to establish vulnerability first. And so without a solid foundation of a connection with somebody, without having a particular expert level vulnerability level with somebody, where you can be very vulnerable, very present, very open with somebody, very trusting. I think I wrote an article on this. I did write an article on this. There's a certain criterion you need to be able to explore this area, and it's a very important aspect, but you need a foundation, you need vulnerability, you need trust. This is a very important part of people's lives. It's a very sensitive topic for many people, depending on your society.
Why is vulnerability required for that? Why is vulnerability required to be an exhibitionist?
Well, with the other person?
Yeah.
I would say that it's because you're trusting the other person with part of who you are.
Okay, so...
Right. I'll give you an example. Let's just say, Damon, you're doing your expeditionist thing with some lady friend, and this is your preference. You go out, this is your preference, and she disrespects your preference for this kind of part of your sexuality. It's not going to go over well after that. Kind of like.
But I mean, you're going to have to bring it up anyway at some point. I mean, obviously you can
Well, you wouldn't be doing it unless you brought it up, right?
Yeah, but my point is, what are the indicators that allow you to go, hey, you know what? I'm a freak in the sheets. What are the indicators?
You talk about it.
Well, yeah, you talk about it, but at what point is it safe? Because, and I mean this, I mean this in the most professional way. At what point is it okay in the relationship to go, hey, I'm a freak?
Well, how you have that talk, it's really simple. It's just a matter of you bring it up. You say to somebody, just in a very, like, as a basic example, hey, like, do you feel comfortable talking about sexuality and fantasies or whatever the case may be, and you kind of gauge back and forth your comfort level with the other individual is, and then you just open up from there.
Okay, but you still mentioned how vulnerability is required. I'll tell you, I've never been vulnerable to hardly anyone in my entire life.
Well, that's
so
the thing.
Basically, nobody's gonna appreciate my freakhood.
Right. Well,
What's up with that?
For you got to test the waters. You got to establish that foundation. Make sure the other person is comfortable around you and vulnerable, and then that way you can open up and put your toe in the water and see if it's cold or warm.
I'm the kind of person that likes to jump right in.
Well, you'll scare the whole flock away if you do that. I can just see you like, here I am, and like.
I'm just messing with you, Daniel. I'm asking questions because I'm messing with you. I like to get this detail out though.
It's like I can like see you like on a beach and the seagulls picking at food, and then I just see you like run up to the seagulls like, I'm an expedition, and they just all fly away.
No, I'm sneaky like a ninja, man.
Well, don't do that. Don't do that. Nobody likes a ninja when it comes to this kind of stuff.
What do you mean? That's the fantasy.
That's what I was about to say. Unless that's the thing. Unless you're into that.
All right. So here's the topic. I'm going to leave it off with you guys, and this is the topic I want you guys to really get into. Me messing with you a little bit, but in all seriousness, I want to make sure that you guys really try to understand how each type may value sexuality in its own right. There's a lot of slants out there, a lot of articles out there that say certain types prefer this kind of thing. Daniel, I want you to kind of share your experience working with people, not doing people, Daniel.
This is hilarious.
Yeah, so let's share your experience and your experience working with different clients of different types and see if there's any correlation.
I totally missed what you just said. Can you just summarize?
Daniel, share your experience with any of your clients of people of different types and the correlations between those types and their sexual ideal of whatever that is. Is it intimacy? Is it one-on-one? Is it polyamory? What is it? Is it promiscuity? Is it whatever it is? I'm trying to draw a correlation. Hopefully we can take some correlation home with types. Mainly, I want to look at the difference between introversion and extroversion.
So would you rather, I could just talk about what I believe certain types correlate with as far as sexual.
Let's start with introversion and extroversion, and if it goes off in another direction, that's fine.
Yeah, so I think that with introverts, there's more of this this kind of build up and release factor. So in my personal experience, and when I work with clients who have trouble with intimacy, there's this sense of a buildup. Like, it's different. I think it's different than what you prefer, Damon. But from what I see with introverts, there's this huge favor of buildup and tension, and kind of like this kind of glass that once it's kind of overflowing with water, it just explodes. And then like there needs to be a release to explore that sexuality.
Okay.
I think
I want Mike's opinion added in this. I got to sign off. If I'll make it in time, I'll be back. But if not, I'll see you guys next time.
So yeah, I think that introverts correlate more with, like a build-up factor to it. So I don't know, Blake, if that makes sense to you. But in my experience, extroverts are just more forward. There's not much of a build-up because I think for extroverts, the build-up is faster than in introverts, and introverts, I think, build up sexually is just kind of, they're very patient, whereas extroverts, I feel like, are not very patient. When extroverts want to explore sexuality, they just do it, right? And so I think there's less. I think there's less focus on the finer details than how an introvert would see it. Introverts, I think, really take a look and are careful with the particularities when it comes to the build up to sensuality. If you don't have a preference for that, it's for like Damon said, some people, and I believe in this, some people really just don't care about the sensuality or the sexuality, and they just want to get right to it, and there's not much of an exploration that's needed. Whereas some people, yeah, but I believe that to some degree everybody needs some level of intimacy, and I think people express it differently. And I believe that introverts are more on the reserve side, and there's more of a buildup for introverts than there is extroverts. So, by the way, guys, if you have any questions in the chat, I am totally able to answer them.
Please ask questions.
Yeah, because Blake is not going to be, he's a very sexual guy, but as far as expressing it, we're not going to expect too much. So, this chat is going to go on for another 20 minutes. So,
hey man, what do you think of people who are just a little bit too crazy about sexuality to the point of becoming what you'd call addicted, sexually obsessed,
sex addict.
predators? What do you think? What dysfunctions do you think are taking place within themselves?
For who? I'm sorry. You just named two different kinds of people.
I did. I thought it was the same. Sexual predators and the sexually obsessed. Isn't that the same thing? No. Oh.
No. One just really values sexual activity too much, and the other one is against the law.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Okay. The sexually obsessed. Let's go with that one, since it's less.
Yeah, and so I think people who are sexually obsessed correlate maybe with having a lack or fixated extroverted sensing preference. Like ESFPs, potentially ISFP. In my mind, in my experience, ESFPs, ISFPs, INFJs, ENFJs, even SI inferior types. Well, actually, no, I wouldn't say SI inferior. But yeah, I would say any type of the ones that I just mentioned, ENFPs. ENFPs are one, right? Because you have to remember ENFP, it's inferior SI. Any type that tertiary or inferior sensing may exhibit this, and depending on the dominant sensor, from what I've seen with sensor types like ESFPs and ISFPs, ISFPs have a buildup, and so there's like a lack of expression until it's just overwhelming, versus an ESFP always needing to be expressive with that sense, really using extrovert feeling to really kind of pursue in this area, and similarly, the ENFP and the INTJ, the ENFP and every type expresses sexuality in a different way. I think for INFPs, it's more pent up. I think it's more about there's more of a hesitation, I think, for sexuality for INFPs. It's something that they want to explore, but they may be more cautious of their sexuality, versus an INFJ, which really opens, which very welcomes sexuality, and honestly, INFJs actually do correlate, with having not I wouldn't say having an issue with sexuality, but a lack of control when it comes to sexual activity. Being very much into sexual activity, not really having a control over their bodies or their own self-control when it comes to sexuality. And so when it comes to types and sexual control, I think that extrovert thinkers are very in control, like you said, and when you look at types that are like intuitive feelers, for example, they don't have that order to say to themselves, oh, I shouldn't do this, or, to feel the way that you do after or before sex, or exploring their sexuality. But when you take a look at certain types that have no control, and they have, S inferior, It's very interesting, So I don't know if we have any questions. Damon's back.
Are we talking about a business agreement here?
No. Did it sound like a business agreement?
No, I didn't even hear it because I was doing something else.
Hey, I want to bring up something. If you're on a college campus and you're dating and having sex, you guys, especially guys out there, you really need to print off consent forms.
Why is everybody zoomed in? Or is that just me?
Get like a signature.
All right, so yeah, we need forms of consent on college campuses. What's going on? Or did I rudely interrupt this conversation?
You like sexually diffuse the environment, Damon. You like came on.
I'm glad because there's two guys here. I don't want it to be sexually aroused. There's two dudes. It needs to be sexually diffused.
We need to have this conversation again, except with the woman in the group.
With the one? Well, yeah,
What?
that Trey would be the only represent. You said with the one in the group?
With the woman.
Oh, a woman. Yeah, that would be a good discussion. Next time we'll add a woman to the group to see her perspective on this.
Does anybody have any questions for MBTI types and sexuality? Any questions you may have about types?
Or NI questions?
What kind of questions?
NI. You said any. It's the typical NI pun. Anyways, yeah, if you have any questions. Okay, they're writing it down.
Who's writing it down?
Like one person.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you heard about what I was saying before, Damon, but I think there is a pretty good, strong, between introverts and extroverts. They do prefer different things. Extroverts may prefer more communication with sexuality versus, introverts. There's more of a buildup that's necessary, and by type, it varies. The sexual fixation is different. I think a lot of inferior or auxiliary sensors, just sensors in general, who have auxiliary or inferior or below, have a lot of not, I wouldn't say issues, but obstacles or challenges when it comes to sexuality. Describe what you can say about INTPs and males and sexualities. I would say that INTPs and males is kind of like a really hard street to walk on, because you have that SE function that really wants to come out and kind of take over, as INTPs do, want to know how to socialize. When it comes to sexuality, it's no different. And so, they really want to do the research, and almost kind of in the same way of an INTJ, they really want to optimize and really, I think, get into like the best way to explore sexuality that may not necessarily be about them, but what's societal, culturally acceptable or what's preferred. But I think that INTP males, whether it's male or female, it's about exploring, extroverted feeling, your function, really having your partner, who is not the INTP, really help you bring out that function, bring out your emotions through sex, which probably will be the only place that you'd really be open to expressing and letting that kind of just unleash. And so you may see a lot of INTPs be very passionate because of that. You may see a lot of INTPs, and I don't know if you guys have been with INTPs to attest to this, either Damon or Blake, but I can see a lot of INTPs really letting loose and exploring FE through sexual activity.
So they want more sexuality videos. Of course, that's going to be popular. One of the most popular topics on the internet, right?
Should we switch our relationship to cell phone plans now? I don't understand that.
Dude, I understand that perfectly.
What does that mean?
Okay, well, this is at the end of the date. You're hot. We have a lot of things in common. Now let's go ahead and sign our contract. It's a 90-day one, because I still don't know a lot about you. I would do the 2-year contract, but we got to do something. We got to work something out first. And we can have sex and share each other's credit cards.
This actually, it takes away from the very integrity of a relationship.
Right.
So, I would say I'd agree with you. Yeah, I've actually been with INTPs before, and I will say that, and this similarly with INFPs, there is a crazy amount of release, pent up sexual tension that I think INFPs and INTPs have. And it's more, since I don't know if it's controllable over time, but I believe that this is an area of both those types that really need to explore sexuality in the sense of having a healthy outlet for sexuality.
Especially INTPs.
Yeah. For the many, because you have to remember, as you go down the ladder in functions, every function that, you use functions more specifically, more particularly in different parts of life, as you use TE, Blake, you can use TE for anything in life pretty much. Versus if you really wanted to use FE, you'd probably only use it for a certain amount of reasons, or situations. And so, when you look at, inferior functions and beyond down the ladder, you see, each function plays more of a role for 1 or 2 or 3 maybe things, for example. Like I'll give you an example. Like I really only tap into like extroverted logic when I'm really in my professional environment. I don't really do that. That's why I tell a lot of people that I used to work with, I'm totally different outside of work. When I'm at work, I'm professional and I'm present. Like I'm logical, I'm efficient and whatever. When I leave work, I'm like this goofy, half serious, intuitive person that you see before you. So when you apply that methodology, that idea to sexuality, there's a lot of types that may or may not tap into it, like INFPs and INTPs. It's important that they explore sexuality very much. I totally believe in that. So we actually are coming down to time, guys. We have 8 minutes. Do you guys have any other questions when it comes to sexuality and MBTI types? I don't know why we're talking about government and church. This is a sexuality video.
Keep it strictly sexual, guys.
Strictly sexual, guys.
That should
we
be a
have
meme.
a lot of people viewing, so I really want to get any questions out, to these viewers. I've read that one noteworthy study found that INTPs are most likely to get married out of all introverted types. Do you all attribute this to inferior FE? No, I attribute that to INTPs wanting to be taken care of. And the best way for that to happen is through marriage. Oh, shots fired. So, but yeah, I don't think it has to do with FE at all. I think it just has to do with, if anything, they're SI. They have values. And the fact that they have TI dominant, they have a framework, especially when it comes to marriage and, what they want in somebody. When they see, the majority of those things being fulfilled, then they will, seek out a marriage and then get taken care of.
Oh gosh, the finale.
Sexuality to finish. I believe that from what I've researched, because I have never been with an INTJ, and from what I know from friends' experiences, INTJs can be one or two ways. It can be, I think every type needs to explore sexuality, and I can't talk for the people who are young, and I can't talk for the people who have journeyed through their own sexuality being an INTJ. I believe that it's in the very nature of an INTJ to optimize and to always really perfect their sexual craft, and that they see it in a way that it's something to really dominate in, as far as being really good at. Dominate in the sexual life, be very good at it. And so there's a lot of INTJs that I've known that say that, you know, they really take pride in wanting to perform and, you know, really understand their own sexuality, really experience that stuff. Yeah, SI justification. I don't know when I said that, but you're welcome. Do we have any other questions, guys, when it comes to, I hope I answered your question, Little Miss Harbor, about INTJs. I may mention, though, INTJ and sexuality to finish. Was there a pun intended or no pun intended? Yeah, INTJs, I think, you know, they really like to optimize, you know, sexuality. You know, and so there's different agendas with every temperament. I feel like intuitive thinkers, they're really more innovators in different areas, just as if, you know, ST types are you know, STJ types maybe are different, you know. So every kind of grouping has their own, you know, fixation, and then it gets more detailed from there. I know two INTJs, and one of them is extremely open about their sexuality, and the other is very conservative. And yeah, why even get married, though the divorce rate is so high? Well, you have to remember the divorce rate is really high for a number of reasons. And part of that is like the total misidentification of gender role and energies, core energies. And people not really. Yeah, we talked about this in another live event. The fact that there's so many, you know, people who are really confused about gender role and how that plays into dynamics with people, social dynamics. And so you have a lot of divorces happening because a lot of women think they're men, and a lot of men don't know what to do with the women who think they're men. So it's just kind of, you know, especially in the States, if we're talking about the United States, you know, there's a lot of people, especially the millennial demographic, which is the majority of the population now, which actually is very frustrated in this sense, because you have the feminist movement, and you have, you know, women rising to equality, but you have a lot of women who also think, you know, equality is synonymous with power and synonymous with a healthy relationship, which is not. You need, you know, an active polarity within relationships to establish sexual attraction, which ends up failing alongside with the second area of divorce, which is finances. You know, finances are a pretty shitty way to go when it comes to relationships. So you have sexual attraction, polarity, and financial stress that attributes to divorces. Yeah, so INFPs, as far as sexuality, INFPs and sexuality, you know, I've been with plenty of INFPs, and what I can attest to is that I believe that INFPs really need that kind of build up as well. Like I said, all introverts need, but there needs to be that polarity. There needs to be polarity with INFPs. There needs to be that outlet, and like a very normal outlet sexually for INFPs. You know, I've seen too many INFPs have like this crazy amount of build up sexually, and so it just kind of comes out in a very explosive way. You know, which for some types like Damon may work because, you know, that's what he prefers, but he knows how to control that, right? And Blake, you probably understand that to some degree. So imagine if you didn't have that control and the patience for that sexual buildup, whereas INFPs don't really have that self control. It just builds up, and they wait for somebody to share it with, and, you know, it's a slow pace kind of thing. But, you know, from what I know about INFPs, you know, there is that slow pace that is built up, and there definitely needs to be that polarity. You know, for INFPs, you know, sexuality is, you know, obviously sacred, as many other types would agree with, but it's a very personal, very, you know, I would say INFPs see sexuality as very intimate, you know, very private, and that if you're sharing that kind of that environment with an INFP, you know, it's kind of like they don't want it hidden away, but they want to make sure that it's really it's shared with that person only, and that the expression is for behind closed doors. And so you'll see like a lot of examples. You'll see a lot of ISTJs and a lot of INFPs not really like PDA. You know, and I believe that only if INFPs are in like head over heels in love, you will see them commit to PDA. A lot of ISTJs, not the case. I've been with several ISTJs and they all really didn't like PDA. Not to say that it correlates with ISTJs, but there may be a correlation with ISTJs and not preferring touch as a love language. Who knows?
In regards to PDA, I always saw it as a tool to really flex your power, that you know, have this portion of your being fulfilled, and you display that outwardly to the populace.
Well, and people,
which really boosts your ego. But
you have to remember, though, people who enjoy PDA also enjoy touch as a love language. So,
okay.
Are ENTJs the same? Same as what? I don't know.
Definitely not.
I don't know. Same as what? I've always, sister is not one for PDA. Yeah, and they don't appreciate it, and they actually see it as incessive. You know, like the average person who commits to PDA for an ISTJ, it's just so overbearing. It's almost like when an INTP gets overwhelmed with emotional data, right? You know, I've been told several times from ISTJs that I've been with, they say, hey, like, this makes me really uncomfortable. And, you know, I'm having second thoughts about this because you seem very assertive when it comes to PDA. And I'm like, no, I just want touch, you know. Yeah, INFJs enjoy PDA because, you know, INFJs is a hit or miss. INFJs want to be with that person. You know, they may fantasize or really desire that intimacy. But INFJs on, as far as sexuality goes, it's not, I wouldn't say very uncontrolled, but they're very susceptible to sexual activity and sexuality.
Oh, man.
So we have 31 viewers in this call. Do any of you have any more questions? And if you do, please comment down below and I will answer, or me, Blake, will answer. If you have questions for us personally, you can do so now.
Yo, somebody just asked what PDA is. PDA is public displays of affection.
Holding hands, touching shoulders, kissing lips, and the occasional kissing eyeballs, licking ears, and sexual activity in libraries. So
licking your friend's nose.
Yeah. And so what I will do, guys, if you have any questions, please write down in the comments below. Blake, look for any comments or about questions. If you do like these live events, guys, please, you know, we really appreciate contributions to our Patreon. We give a lot of rewards out to you guys for those who donate to us. We have a lot more content on the way. And so, you know, every little step counts as far as, you know, relationships, dating, and love and compatibility. I do have a series for you guys that I'm working on. I have 2 more videos being released in my dating relationship series for types. I already have INFJ and INTP done, and I have INTJ and INFP coming out. They're being edited right now. So stay tuned for that series. Like, are you looking for questions?
Yeah, I was looking for questions.
None so far, I believe.
No.
So anyway, I'm going to be releasing a lot more spiritual videos. So you're going to see my long-awaited spirituality side come out in my videos now. You know, I've always been into spirituality, and, you know, obviously our channel started out with MBTI, and we, you know, will be slowly branching out into all these different parts of, you know, personal development. So stay tuned for spirituality, more NLP, more sexuality videos maybe, and how to really change your life for within the moment. You know, I'm going to be creating a lot of motivating videos on things you can do within 10 to 15 minutes that can really change your life. And so I'm going to be doing a lot of videos and giving you
good stuff.
A lot of tools. Yeah, I just recorded a video you know, about the Wheel of Life. And so, you know, there's just so many videos that we have to get to, guys. And so it's really important that you take the time to really, get your worth out of these live events and ask us any questions or reach out to me or any of the contributors, even Blake, who has refrained from making videos. But if you guys...
No, I'm better at ranting than making videos. As a matter of fact,
I love
you
ranting.
think ranting is a part of personal development when you aggressively outwardly display what you're fed up with?
Listen, I really do love ranting as well. But anyway, guys, so if you want to reach out to either or anyone else involving any of the topics that we covered in this video, or if you want to work with me or Damon in the area of dating, relationships, or NLP, feel free to reach out. We do free consultations. We really want to help you guys out and really, have this channel thrive, not just for viewers, but really want to work with you guys too. There's a lot of people who do struggle in this area of sexuality, dating, and relationships. Like Damon said, he's never been in a relationship. He's dated, and
Kissed a girl.
He's kissed a girl, and he's done more than kissing a girl, but he hasn't been in a relationship. And so, for all you out there who may be an INTP or an INFP or somebody who struggles in the dating arena or relationship arena, we can really create a strategy and help you build on your skills to bring to fruition the lifestyle that you want to have in these areas. So either that, or what I can do is I can put in like a link in the description to work with me for free. I do pro bono on this website called 7 Cups when I'm on. If you go to 7cups.com and you look up Daniel Motivating, you can check me out and we can message back and forth and talk about issues that you have. It's a very anonymous kind of platform. But also as well, check out the Slack chat, the MBTI, or personal development chat rooms. Do you have any more questions, Blake? Or are we...
No, just some comments and then something about ENTJs and INTJs.
Yeah, and I believe Damon went over that in the beginning of the video, but I will reiterate the difference between ENTJs and INTJs sexually is that ENTJs kind of have a mission or an idea. They have an idea of painting in their mind that they want to bring into completion, and they need all of the prerequisites of values and needs before they can start making this painting with somebody. And they need to stick with the mission that they see themselves having. I think INTJs really just kind of like the idea of knowing everything about their own sexuality and performing, optimizing, and really exploring sexuality with the other person. Self-isolation. I will not do a video on self-isolation about the INFJ type because that's a level, that's an area of unhealthiness. And so what I could potentially do is do an INFJ video in terms of different areas of growth and health and disintegrations of unhealthiness. But I will not just do videos on INFJs for the sake of doing them, when, I can just basically sum up in like two or three sentences, why it is that an INFJ goes through self-isolation.
Yeah, focus more on the solutions and the growing, not the...
Yeah. And self-isolation isn't just INFJ bound. A lot of types, any type can really go through anything. So we really need to get rid of these stigmas that we give types. Remember that any type can go through isolation. ESFP, ESTPs, ESTJs, and ESFJs. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to get to all of them. But if you leave a comment in the video description, we can get to those, the comment section anyway. But there was a lot of, I did cover a lot of those topics, though, with those types in this video, though, I believe, Blake, except for ESTPs. But, yeah, so going forward, I hope you guys liked this video. Blake, do you have anything to end off on as far as sexuality goes?
Experiment with all types. Don't think just because an article says that you connect better with a certain personality type, don't let that keep you closed-minded from other types and trying things out with them. Keep it open mind. And this is coming from an ESTJ. keep it open mind. Right.
Yeah, and you have to remember to explore your sexuality. Make it a priority if you want to pursue a relationship or have a dating life. You have to tackle all these areas. This is what really creates a relationship, a relationship in terms of a connection with somebody. Sexuality is important to you. It's how you actually, exploring your own sexuality will really come out in your day-to-day life, believe it or not. So for all of you guys who really are not the best with communication, it stems from your sexuality, and your sexuality stems from your past conditioning or how you were raised and what you just naturally prefer. And so, you only have one life. Start exploring yourself now. Don't wait till you're 40 like Blake will, when he finally cares to explore his sexuality. Do it now so it helps you with your interpersonal.
You don't know what I do.
I don't know what you do. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. So, this has been it, guys. Donate if you can. Donate if you can. Go to our MBTI chat rooms. Links is in the description of the video. And reach out to us if you want to work on your dating and relationship life or your sexuality, or want to work with a coach in general. And so, on that note, thanks for joining, Blake.
I freaking love you all. Okay.
All right. Before this gets too much for Blake, I'll see you guys later. See you this Sunday.